Hey guys, this is Carrie Vaughn, and I am here today with my dear friend Jackie Massey. We are talking today. This is our first kind of interview that we are doing on the Never Home page group. And so Jackie and our families have known each other for 12 or 13 years, I think. They were in China, not the same city, but we were in China at the same time together. And our families actually chose to vacation together many times. So it shows that they're not just friends, but they're like, we can handle going on vacation together friends. So they have 4 children and we have got 5 kids, and our kids' ages just really meshed well together. And so they could the kids could go play, and us parents sat there and drank like multiple Thai iced teas throughout the course of the day. So Jackie, tell us just really briefly about your family, how long you've been in the States, what you're doing here.
Okay, so we've been back since 2014, so about 6 years. And we are now currently living in a really small town of about 2,500 people.
Little smaller, yeah.
Yeah, and my husband is pastoring a church, doing church revitalization.
Okay, so that brings me to one of my first questions, is that you guys moved from huge urban China. You guys were outside Shanghai. So yes. That was how many people in Wuxi?
We had roughly about 9 million people in our city.
Okay, so 9 million to now you're in small town South Carolina of, you said how many?
2,500.
2,500. So just like a slight population variance. So when you guys first got, and South Carolina is not where either one of you grew up either, correct?
No, we're from Louisiana.
So you are not only going from urban China to small town USA, but to a totally new place. What are some of the barriers that you guys experienced in developing community in the new place?
Yeah, well, I guess one of the biggest part is when you move into a small town like we did, there's definitely a feeling of insiders versus outsiders.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of our biggest, I guess, barriers, you could say. But however, our perspective of it was, we're used to being outsiders. We're used to being Laowai or, foreigners.
Yeah.
So we could handle that. Like that part of it was okay for us. But it's whenever you start getting close to people and communicating to try to build that community, that's when it got sticky, because we spoke the same language, but we didn't understand each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you guys were maybe accustomed to being outsiders, but the insiders, especially in a small town, aren't used to the outsider.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
The circles are very closed.
So I think you guys actually did a really remarkable job of overcoming some of those barriers, especially early on. Talk to me about some of the things that you did.
We pretty much had an open house mentality. So we would constantly, when we were overseas, we constantly invited people over into our home, families to come into our home, not just the adults, but the kids too, having dinners and just long talks. So here we felt like we wanted to do the same, just to let people connect with us. There were multiple times where I invited, being from Louisiana, I made a whole couple of pots of gumbo and invited literally the whole church to come to my house.
Yeah, and eat. It's good gumbo, I'll say, yeah.
So it was mostly inviting people and hosting people into our home to break down barriers and to let them know that, we're not strange city folk, but, we can relate.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one thing that I have yet to decode here in America is hosting, right? Not just the act of hosting, but like the reciprocity in hosting is really different here. I mean, I know in China, no joke, we would meet people at a bus stop, and then 2 days later, we would be at their home eating food at their dinner table. So What are some differences that you've seen? And what are some things maybe that you brought from your China life of welcoming people into your home that you brought here? Well, you gave an example there, but what are some ways that you maybe brought that mentality with you?
So I think some of the main differences here that I've found is to eat dinner with a family. It's more of a formal thing. Like, for instance, like very few people actually invited us to their house. But if they were going to invite us to their house, it was for a purpose, like a birthday party.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
On the occasion, there was somebody who invited us to their house outside of some type of party or celebration. It was very formal. Like, it was sit down, have the placemats and the settings and the 3-course meals, and we're very informal. As China's very informal, I feel, in that aspect. One thing we did bring over was when we first came, we bought a circle table.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I can tell you how many great conversations we had of gathering around the circle table.
Yeah.
But in that aspect is different. Another thing I was talking about this with my kids, we realized that in China, we were always inviting whole families, like spending time with whole families, grandmas, moms, dads, kids, everybody.
Yeah.
Here, it's almost separated. So it's unusual that you get an invite for your whole family unless it's a birthday party. It's mostly the parents go and eat, or just the kids are coming to my house. So that's been kind of different. It's difficult to engage the adults when it's only the kids coming to my house. And the parents are too busy.
Yeah.
Or the parents are consumed with sports for their kids, and so they don't have any time to go anywhere else anyway. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a sense of, you touched on this a little bit, that everything needs to be really perfect before we can have someone over, and I think we need to allow ourselves some informalness so that it doesn't feel stressful. At 4:00, we would be okay with, so-and-so can come over for dinner, even though we're having like Frito pies or something that is not all that extravagant of a meal,
Right, yeah, and including them in and cooking with us.
Yeah.
That's something that's abnormal here. It's, when you're invited to someone's house, it's supposed everything's already ready. Okay? And then you're
absolutely right.
You're served. But in China, we did it differently. Like, you come over, hey, come cook with us, come hang out in our kitchen with us. And that's something we've also tried to implement here. It's been, nice, just hanging out.
I feel like that was, so one of the things that happens, I think, when we move back is we end up questioning ourselves all the time. And thinking back to this in the fall, when every time we had someone over and they would say, "Oh, can I help?" I would always say, "Yeah, here, can you come cut the onions?" And then I realized afterwards, I hope they weren't just asking, "Can I help?" Like, because that's what Americans will just do. Like, "Can I help?" Because I would just put them to work. So I don't know if that's okay, but that's what happened. So.
Okay, so I do have to say this too about hosting. Being from Asia for so long, we don't wear shoes in our house. I have shoe closets next to my door, and we drop everything off. Americans are like, what we found in our town, they're embarrassed to take their shoes off. It's almost like, no, don't ask me to take my shoes off. I can't show my feet. It's weird. And even I'm like, look, I have slippers you can put on. And they're like, no, that's okay. I'll just keep my shoes on. So that was a little awkward.
To get used to. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. When we first moved to China, when you guys first moved to China, we took a real posture of trying to, I used the word earlier, decode what it meant to host.
Right.
And I think we have to take that same posture now, right? And go, okay, what is it that is going to reach people and make them feel comfortable in my home, or how can I put myself into their world? And you have to take a posture of decoding what that looks like.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy to go one's better than the other, but really they're just different, and we just have to take the time to figure them out. So. Yeah. Jackie, do you have any, I just love your wisdom, and we could talk all day, but any other last departing words about hosting and friendship?
I do. The last thing I would say is pay attention to how people talk, because coming from East Asia, we had no sarcasm in our family. China doesn't do sarcasm. Yeah. Here, it was so difficult for us to overcome, because everybody's sarcastic.
Yes.
Everybody.
Yes.
And my kids still have a hard time understanding sarcasm. And even just as, when you go into another culture, you're trying to figure out languages and words and what they mean. Even here in this small town, they say things that I've never heard of. And I've had to almost learn like the Kershaw slang or the different words. And so I think communication, listening to how people speak is important too.
Absolutely. That is such a good word. And the last little bit, I had an experience with one of my Chinese friends here in the States, and our family we are sarcastic. We have always been sarcastic. And I had to overcome that in China because I would think of all these kind of sarcastic jokes and I would throw them out there. And my Chinese friends, 10 times out of 10 would not understand them.
Right. Yeah.
And so I actually bought some groceries for one of my Chinese friends the other day, and I didn't want her to pay me for them. So I was dropping them off and I told her, oh, well, today, all the sesame oil and Sichuan pepper oil, they were all free. So you don't have to worry about it. And she's like, what? Like she really thought, oh my gosh, that's so, and I went, oh no, I'm joking. And I had to, remind myself sarcasm doesn't work. So anyway, Jackie, thanks so much for sharing. I know that this is something that we're all constantly thinking on and trying to process through. So I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. See ya.
Bye.